So moving on the first day of the retreat, I focused particularly on devotion. And it's a bit like we've come full circle. We've gone through all those other positive emotions. And now I'm coming back to talk to Ratnavandana about her experience of devotion and of ritual within the ordinary life within her home. And I always put ordinary in inverted commas, because what is ordinary life? Life is life. We can feel very, very grateful for it, but it may at times fit for us that description of being more ordinary. I think in doing this, I'm feeling I'm connecting with something else that I spoke about, which is gratitude to those who have gone before us, because Ratnavandana was an established order member long before me. So gratitude to those of us who've gone before us. And of course, in Ratnavandana's case, she's just still very, very active, actively leading, actively giving, actively and sharing, deepening her practice. So, it's a privilege to be talking to you this morning. At the beginning I'll hand over to Ratnavandana, but before I do that, I don't want to formally introduce her, but I do just want to share more about what she has given in her life in the order, because that is part of the context of what we are talking about. Some of you may know that Ratnavandana started her professional life in the 1960s in the music industry as it was at that time. And then she chose, primarily I think for ethical reasons, to turn away from that and the success she had had in as an administrator in that area. But she chose to leave that, and that started her on her path to the Dharma, her path to her deepening practice. So Ratnavandana lived here for a good number of years. She looked after the garden here, so another skill and another legacy in a way. She was overall women's mitra convener, and that's how we first coincided when I was much newer to the order. She was overall women's mitra convener for a good number of years, I think in the 1990s onwards. So holding the team of women mitras at that time, and actually the women's wing was really beginning to expand and the women's order was expanding. So a significant role there. She also lived in the community in Birmingham, which was really for senior women order members. At the same time as Majjhima was set up, and Bhante moved there with the order members who were supporting him and the preceptors who were supporting him. Ratnavandana was in the smaller women's community, which was very nearby, with other very senior order members at that time. And then I think from there, I'm talking about that, I'm conscious of Ratnavandana there, and I kind of want to speak to her directly, but I'll be doing lots of that later, so I'll keep with the more public sharing at the moment. And then she moved, I think, to the place she's going to tell us more about, which is living on her own in Wales, so quite a change, quite a difference. But not a change in her active life. Ratnavandana is private preceptor to 29 women, and that in itself is, well, it's quite something actually to have brought all those women into the order, and also all the degree of care that involves. And I'm sure you also carry on a mitra to other women. And of course, how most of us know Ratnavandana, what's really, really important is as a teacher, and particularly around the Brahma Viharas. And we've all benefited from that and from Ratnavandana's experience in that this week. So teaching on retreats, leading retreats, visiting centres, and almost as soon as retreats started on Zoom, I think the first retreat which Tara Loka set up was Ratnavandana leading on the Brahma Viharas. So that active flow of giving, which is in tune with the practices that you are actually sharing. And of course, you also have a deep love of ritual, and we're very, very aware of that. And finally, Ratnavandana has given the movement, and more widely, her photographs. So that beautiful aesthetic sense, sensitivity to the environment, to nature, to living beings, and to images of devotion. and some of the moon poems that we saw earlier in the week, Ratnavandana had taken. So a lovely flow of that as well. Okay, I'm going to have a pause. I'm going to hand over to Ratnavandana because I asked her to set the scene for her life at the moment before moving into more particular questions. So over to you.
Thank you very much, Samantabhadri, and yeah, I just really appreciate this opportunity just to share in this way, because it isn't something actually that well, one gets the opportunity to do very often, so it does feel quite precious. Yeah, although, well, yes, it feels quite precious. So I've set up the there's a little video that I want to show you first of all, and it's not you know, no good quality as a video, but I think it does really bring a bit of a sense of where I am living at the moment. It was something that I did earlier this year, and it'll sort of convey much more clearly than a photograph, yeah, the environment in which I'm living, and in particular, well, I'll let's see the video first, perhaps, and then I'll say more. That's my cat, Safi. That's Rufus, my dog. So that gives you, yeah, I think quite a strong sense of a very beautiful environment in which I'm fortunate to live and have lived for quite a number of years now. But it also feels really important because the figure that you see there by my prayer flag, holding hands in the Anjali Mudra, is, yes, that's what kind of informs everything. Well, the ideal is that it informs everything that takes place within my life. And the prayer flag is very much the way that symbolically I imagine my practice going out into the world. It's just lovely, you know, when it's caught by the wind, just seeing it and having that sense that it's just carrying everything out into the world. So other photographs, there's a picture of my shrine as it is now. It's just it's interesting. This is quite a recent development with my shrine. I mean, in actual fact, this is just a small part of the shrine room, which I'm sitting actually in the midst of the mandala of the 5 Buddhas. There are shrines in each direction, and I'm in the middle of them. It feels like with Avalokiteshvara before me, it feels a very potent place of practice. And yes, it feels a little different at the moment because I'm sharing the house now, which is since September this year, after nearly 12 years of being there on my own. So next to my shrine, Devotional, who I'm sharing the house with, has her shrine. She's an Avalokiteshvara practitioner as well, so she has the four-armed form there, which is, yeah, very, very lovely. So the next picture, yes, it's again just very often it's a place of rainbows, it feels, and there's so many rainbows, but I just loved this sense of my prayer flag being captured by the rainbow. And then we can move on. This is where I spend quite a bit of time, my hearth, as it were. Yes, it's a very lovely space. I'm very, very lucky to have this beautiful fire, and it feels like it's a place of much reflection. It has beautiful, a huge bay window that overlooks that view that you saw. So very often I'm sitting on my settee next to the fire, and I'm just pondering, looking out on this wonderful view. So onwards. Yeah, this is Rufus, my companion dog. He's definitely very much his own self, as it were. He's not one of those dogs. I mean, he absolutely loves people, is very, very friendly dog. But he's very much his own being. He likes his space, and he's very responsive. I feel he has a real sense of humour. He loves to do things that he knows. Like when I'm preparing the fire and I'm screwing up the paper to put in the fire, he'll just suddenly dart in and grab a piece of the paper and tear it to shreds. And he has me laughing a lot, which is great. There's another picture of him, which I think really shows him. I was in Scotland on solitary retreat at the time, and he just gloried in that space as much as I did. And that sort of feels like him there, just taking in his world. And you can imagine his nose picking up all these myriad scents that are just telling him so much. He's a wonderful companion. And then there's Safi the cat. And Safi is no more, in fact. He died in September this year. He was 16 or so he had a good run. But he had, he'd been, I'd met him first as a little kitten when I was living in that community in Birmingham. And he appeared not to have he didn't have any other kittens, didn't appear to have a mother cat. He seemed to be very much on his own, just as a little tiny kitten. And gradually I befriended him, and he moved with me, and moved with me particularly to where I'm living now, and that was his domain. I mean, the thing I loved about him too is that he was very much his own cat, just like Rufus is very much his own dog. And although he became friendlier and friendlier and enjoyed a bit of human companionship, he had his own life very much, and it was his domain there. I miss him. Okay, think that might be all of the photos. So hopefully that gives you a sense of where I am. I could just say a little bit more because it feels as though I'm entering a very new phase of my life there, which has, as I said, been very solitary up until recently. And that decision initially came out of the fact that actually somebody was in need and they needed somewhere to live, and I could offer the situation. But then I came to see quite quickly that actually it was probably a really significant step for me in terms of deepening my practice further, in the sense that I'd had everything there. When you live on your own, you have everything on your own terms, don't you? It's, you don't get the challenges to your practice. You don't know how you'll respond or react when things are not as you'd like them to be. And I had just realised that actually was a great opportunity, and that I needed that opportunity, just to see whether I could rise to the challenge or not. I mean, I am really loving it so far, just having somebody to share, time in the shrine room together. We've done a couple of retreats online together, and yes, that sense of being able to talk together about our practice. And yes, the challenges, and I'm actually enjoying those at the moment. Who knows whether it will continue that way. But it does feel significant because it also feels as though it's probably, in a couple of years, I'm maybe really going to need to leave where I am, because I probably won't be able to carry on physically living there. And I'm hoping very much that I might be able to be in a situation with more people, community life again, which I would love. So this is a very good step in that direction.
Oh, well, thank you. You've set the scene for us and given us some images to remember Ratnavandana. I was just wondering, coming back to, moving from spiritual friendship, which is also just so important to acknowledge here, but coming back to the theme of ritual and devotion, would you like to say any more about how that happens within the flow of your daily life? Or maybe even if just you have some memorable moments that you might like to share, which maybe you couldn't capture on a photograph.
Well, lots and lots of memorable moments that I could share. But I think, perhaps the thing to say about it's sort of the context in a way for everything, and the words that I use to describe it to myself at the moment is that attending to life is an act of love. And those words, as soon as they come to my mind, it's as though everything just changes in an instant. And whatever I'm doing, if I'm washing the dishes, if I'm having a shower, I mean, all the mundane, usual things, suddenly it's in connection with the shrine of Avalokiteshvara. I'm in the presence of the Buddhas, I'm in the presence of Avalokiteshvara. Everything is just on a completely different basis. It's as though it just opens things up. Brings everything into the sacred. And so the act of doing it, all of a sudden, it's just a shift, a complete shift. And it makes it beautiful, whatever you're doing, and however often you do it. It gives a reason to be doing it. It all, brings everything, the whole of life together in that one moment of recognition that attending to life is an act of love.
Thank you. And has all of this happened just as the natural deepening of the flow of your practice, or have there been sort of conscious decisions about this is how I need to live, this is how I'd like to practice, like to be with my life?
No, it's been definitely been a conscious choice, a conscious decision. And I remember very soon after I was ordained, and Bhante giving me my name, that in itself, he said at the time that people were probably expecting me to have quite a different sort of name, and he had chosen to call me Ratnavandana, which he said was either jeweled salutation or jewel of devotion. And at that time, I didn't value that quality in myself at all. It was just something that I almost kind of wished away, and yet here was Bhante actually choosing to name me in the way that he did. And obviously that had a significant effect. And I took on the sadhana of Avalokiteshvara at the time, and that had a huge impact. Suddenly having a daily practice that, it was vast, absolutely vast, the sort of scale of it. And I just had the sense then, I can remember that, the word that came to mind quite often was surrender, that I needed to surrender to it. And the feeling of wanting to kind of surrender my will to his will. And that is what's grown and become more and more conscious. And I came to realize at some point, and it's difficult to know kind of what comes, the order things come in, but that, intention, that whole sense of having an overall intention for my life, that became key. I realized that I needed to have that sort of, that vision of what could be possible, which was very much about surrendering my will to him, being a channel, an empty channel, so that his energy could manifest in the world. And recognizing that, rather than just feeling, that I needed to change, it felt as though having this intention, this kind of overall vision that I was moving towards, it became the driving force. It was almost like a magnetic force that then it came to kind of underlie everything. And it's as though in the light of that, it shows very clearly what's needed at any particular time. It's as though it's a bit like, a path of moonlight or something, where it just lights up the way, and all I've got to do is kind of be open and receptive and follow it. So it's become very much a sense of yes, surrendering my will to Avalokiteshvara, within the mandala of the five Buddhas. Through my practice, he's very much taken me into the mandala of the five Buddhas, and of course the Brahma Viharas, and the Brahma Viharas and the five Buddha mandala are inextricably linked in my mind. So it's trying to live very much within that mandala, which is a very, very beautiful, challenging place to be. And I can just trust that, I can just trust that to lead me where I need to go. And it's interesting just to recognize that, as a child, I was very, very drawn to St. Francis of Assisi, which anybody who knows your saints, he was very much someone who loved animals, and all the pictures of him would be of him surrounded by animals. But I remember that before my confirmation, I was brought up as a Catholic. Before my confirmation, I discovered his prayer, and I found it. I mean, I loved it. I absolutely loved it, and I used to carry it around with me. And there was a place that I used to go to where in nature where I would be on my own, and I remember I used to get this rather scruffy bit of paper out and read it, and it had a huge effect on me. And I really hope that because it's so like Avalokiteshvara in actual fact, the prayer. I could read just a bit of it, because it starts with, Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. In some translations, it's, Lord, make me a channel of thy peace. That where there is hatred, I may bring love. That where there is wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness. That where there is error, I may bring truth. That where there is doubt, I may bring faith. That where there is despair, I may bring hope. And where there are shadows, I may bring light. That where there's sadness, I may bring joy. Grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved. For it is by giving that one receiveth, it is by self-forgetting that one finds, it is by forgiving that one is forgiven, it is by dying that one awakens to eternal life. So I can relate that very, very strongly to Avalokiteshvara. And I really hope that in some way, I do have a sense of what I'm working with in this lifetime, and definitely feel that the path that I'm on is, just plug in my computer, it's telling me it's going to go any minute. Is where I need to be to do what I need to do in this lifetime.
Yes, you use the word challenge, and I think in some of your presentations, or maybe one, you talked about darker times. And you're also very close to speaking about challenge. You also spoke about trust. But I wondered if you could say any more. Well, are there times when actually this practice feels harder, feels more difficult, feels more challenging? And then are there particular ways that you respond that help with you?
Well, yes, there definitely are times, difficult times. It's just fascinating, really, how, at certain times you can feel yourself to be, just really connected, really rooted in your practice, very clear about what you're doing. And there can be other times when it just feels as though it disappears. It's, all of a sudden, one of the things that I really love living where I do is in the environment that I live in, is that sense of everything speaking. It's as though, when I walk by the river's become a teacher. And if I'm just open and receptive, it's just wonderful. It feels like a friend. The trees, there are so many trees around me that, on different days, different trees call, and for me to stand by them, they give me something. It's just very, very beautiful. And then there can be another time when all of a sudden it just sort of feels as though there's a disconnect. And it isn't anything in particular necessarily, but just that sense that suddenly, that openness to all this beauty, all this connection disappears. And I just, the way that I deal with it really again and again and again is I just sit with Avalokiteshvara. I chant the mantra, his mantra has just become an absolute refuge, really, in so many situations. Just feeling that, I try to, before I go to sleep at night, I go to sleep chanting the mantra, and I try to wake chanting the mantra, so that I have the feeling that when I come to it consciously, that actually it's there turning in my heart. And so that's where I go, and it's almost like, feeling then something gradually, coming back to life, really. That connection, it's just like something's pulled the plug out, and then I need to plug it back in again. And well, he's unfailing in his response, and what I have to do is be receptive to it. It's always me who lets him down, in a sense. He never ever lets me down.
So just staying with this particular thread, but of course you're not always in your beautiful landscape. You're not always with your shrine, and I mean, lockdown may have meant that was more the case, but you have long experience of living in a city, of probably stations, service stations, supermarkets, the very familiar pattern of many of our lives. And I just wonder if you could say any more about practice in those situations, or have there been moments in those situations when you've really had your deep devotional response?
I'm just transported, as you say that, suddenly to Dublin. I'm in Dublin when I was doing the overall Mitra convening, and I'm standing just by the Liffey, the River Liffey, by this bridge there in Dublin, and it's masses of people and buses and noise and everything going on around. And Avalokiteshvara is standing there in the midst of it all. It was just astonishing. He had his rainbow-coloured leggings on. He was so enormous. I mean, he just reached into the sky. The 1,000-arm figure was there. And it was just a truly wonderful moment. Of course, things are not like that all the time, although there have been plenty of those. And there are many times, when I'm traveling in the way that we all do, and I'm affected by different things that are going on. But what I've learned to do over the years is I've got all my little triggers, as it were, little things that when I do certain things, the idea is that I just pause and I just take a step back into myself in that moment. And that reconnects me with my whole purpose in life. It just feels like in that moment I have a chance, just to remember, that I'm not just busily going about doing whatever it is I'm doing. It's actually much more than that. And it changes everything in that moment. So that's very much what I do, particularly when I'm, in an environment that is going to be challenging in lots of ways. So every time I'd open a door, that would be a cause to pause. And then it's as though I'm opening the door in a very different way, in a very different world. It just, that shift happens in that moment of pause. So it's those sorts of things that really help.
Thank you. So that's engaging with different places, and then also there was the passage of time as well. And one of your talks, you talked about the sense of being older, and I know that also you've had and have health concerns as well. So I wonder, as you enter this kind of phase of your life, and it's great that you are as healthy and as active as you are at the moment, but I wonder if that experience and that awareness, a deeper awareness of impermanence, informs your devotional and your ritual practice.
Yeah, very, very much so. I mean, I remember when I came up to my 70th birthday having the sense, I mean, it was just a wonderful kind of vision, really, of being able to see over the hill. You know, there you are, all of your life, you're kind of climbing the hill, and all of a sudden I could see over the horizon, and I could see the size of the cloth, as it were. And of course, it's quite salutary, you know, to realize that, you know, you can probably count the years of your life. I mean, not that any of us know, but, you know, at least probably on 2 hands, maybe 3 hands, who knows, at that point. And well, what I found with that in particular was gratitude rose very, very strongly. Just that sense of appreciation for what I have now. I mean, who knows what's going to happen? I don't think, and it's just so unpredictable, isn't it? Old age. And I remember when, before I was actually diagnosed with the polymyalgia rheumatica, which I still have, before it was diagnosed, and I was in a very, very difficult situation where I wasn't able to move about much at all. I was having to spend long periods of time lying down. And I remember very clearly feeling that, you know, well, as long as I've got my mind, actually, I can still practice. I can still practice. And that this particular time afforded me the opportunity, you know, to do that more than ever. In fact, seeing as I was just, you know, lying there, not able to do much else. And I realized that if that is the case, you know, if I don't kind of lose my mind, if I'm still able to be conscious, whatever happens, you know, I can still chant the mantra. I can still practice. So that feels really important. And now, you know, it's just very interesting. I mean, I've been having problems with my heart, and the heart is something that, you know, it's such a fundamental, basic thing. And sometimes, you know, I am there at night with that sense of not knowing whether it might give out or whatever. And it's just very interesting being on that edge sometimes, feeling that I'm on that edge sometimes. And the knowing that I've got more to do, further to go, and the wish to do it, it just really, inspires me to devote myself more and more to practice, that it's the only thing that really matters. And the wish to do it. So it's been a strong motivating factor, and making me realize, you know, how much time I've wasted, you know, in my life. And, you know, that we do, because we just don't realize we kind of squander the life that we have. I certainly feel for myself that, you know, despite the fact that I've been practicing for so many years, that within that, I can see now, you know, how much time I've squandered, and I feel real regret about that. Mm.
So at the beginning of this session, I gave a list of some of the ways that you have given to the order and given to the movement, and there may be other areas that I didn't actually include there as well. So as you do get older, as well as looking at the present experience and what might come, if you look back, do you feel there's anything that you're particularly pleased to have done, pleased to have given? Yes, how should I say it? Or moved, even moved to have given, that would touch, you know, the emotional activity of your heart, which is still very alive. So looking back, Ratnavandana, well, I mentioned friendship in my talk, and so my glory could be that I had such friends. Where might your glory be? Where might your glory be?
Mm. Well, I mean, I think what really comes to mind particularly is when my time at Toraloka was coming to an end, when I knew that I was going to be leaving at some point, I went to see Bante, and I had it very much in mind that I wanted to deepen my practice further. I mean, you know that life at Toraloka is a busy life. It's a very full life. I was Mitra convener at Toraloka as well, as being very involved in retreat leading and the garden and so on. And I had this idea of, really wanting to go deeper, and was thinking with some other people about the possibility of starting a retreat center that was more like Vajraloka was at the time, that was more devoted to meditation, deepening meditation, wanting to deepen my own practice of meditation. And I went to see Bhante and told him about this, and we had a conversation about it. He, asked some questions and so on and so forth, and then he started to talk about the fact that Srimala was going to be stopping being overall Mitra convener, and what a need there was in the movement at the moment, the situation that there were very, very few Dharmacharinis around who he thought, could fulfill that function, and that he felt quite strongly that it was something that I could, within the sorts of things that I had done in my life, was something that I could do and do well. And he wasn't saying I want you to do it, but he was suggesting quite strongly, and I felt as though I went in there and I was facing in one direction, which was very much a sense of kind of taking myself off and deepening my practice in a particular way. And he turned me round to face the world, and I walked out of there, with just a very, very different sense. And there was no decision to make then. It felt, how could I not? And of course, I very quickly came to realize that there were all these women all over the country who were involved in small centers. They had no dharmacharinis. They couldn't become mitras. It was just people were stuck in that situation where they felt they couldn't take their practice further. And, that was just, unbearable, really. So, with the help of Bhante very much, we devised a way that these women could become mitras. I had to find someone for each place who was prepared to actually become what Bhante termed a Bhagini for each of these centres. So that they could become mitras under those circumstances. So, that's what happened in lots and lots of places. I found dharmacharinis prepared, to take these people on with their mitra study. There were certain conditions they had to fulfill, and so they were able to become mitras. And I feel that really, is it was a wonderful thing. It was a wonderful thing to be involved in, and things never went back after that because, of course, it just felt as though somehow everything was able to take a shift forward, and it wasn't long before some of those women were able to get ordained, and it was definitely, I think that would have to be it.
Oh, thank you so much, Ratnavandana. We'll give you a little bit of a break now, but thank you so much for sharing as clearly, but also as deeply and as openly as you have in response to those questions and those areas of exploration. And quite simply, it's been a privilege to hear you this morning. I'm very pleased that this has been recorded, and it's been a very Well, it's been a very joyful experience as well. You spoke about Mudita, and it's been a lovely experience. And our rooms up in the loft are now suddenly bathed in the sunlight. So that's
I know.
very nice.
Gorgeous.
So thank you so much. And we will just sit for 10 minutes in the space of your words, in the atmosphere of your words.